Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today we're going to be doing our 82nd D&D 3.5 Prestige class review, and we're going to be looking at the Enlightened Spirit Prestige class from the Complete Mage Sourcebook. Enlightened Spirits basically are warlocks who have found a higher calling following the holy, good-aligned powers as opposed to the dark and demonic powers that all other warlocks tend to follow. And it's important going into this prestige class to look at it to realize that warlocks don't, by default, have to be evil or even non-good. They just need to be either evil or chaotic, and as a result, you can have a chaotic good warlock. The example character given for this prestige class is actually lawful good, so he's turned his back on his warlock powers for the most part in order to gain the powers of this prestige class. But all you need to be for this prestige class is good aligned, so if you don't want to worry about violating the strictures of your base class, you can always just play a chaotic good warlock, which is probably the most fitting. So Enlightened Spirits, essentially these are warlocks that have turned their backs on their fiendish legacy, embraced the path of good. They can get all sorts of holy powers, but they are still going to be shooting enemies with their Eldritch Blast and using invocations. So, what do you need to become an Enlightened Spirit? Well, the requirements are pretty simple. Your alignment needs to be of any good alignment. You need 8 ranks in Knowledge of the Planes, and you need Eldritch Blast 3d6. So you absolutely have to have at least 5 levels in Warlock to start taking levels in this Prestige class. But the good news is that pretty much any Warlock can qualify for this, and you can do anything else you want with your feats and your skill ranks outside of those 8 ranks in Knowledge of the Planes, which you're probably going to want anyway. So it's pretty easy to become an Enlightened Spirit, presupposing that you are a Warlock, of course, and this Prestige class is just for Warlocks. So taking that into account, this Prestige class's requirements are lightly restrictive. As for what you get from being an Enlightened Spirit, you get a d6 hit die, you get a Goodwill save, you get 2+ Intelligence modifier skill points per level, and a 3/4 base attack bonus. Which makes sense, these are similar to what the Warlock gets, so you're just going to be continuing your progression as a Warlock for the most part. Now, when you go into this Prestige class, you are going to gain continued advancement with your Eldritch Blast eventually, and you also are going to, well, you're no longer going to gain invocations. That's the major thing. So this is a 10-level Prestige class, and if you come into this at level 5 when you have 3 invocations known, and you leave at 15th level where a 15th level Warlock would have 9 invocations known, that's 6 invocations that you are missing out on. And that's important to keep in mind because this Prestige class is described basically as a Warlock that gives up their fiendish powers or their invocations in order to get specifically selected ones. Now, whenever you're giving up options or choice in a role-playing game for your character advancement, then necessarily the options that are being predefined for you, they have to be better in order to be worth taking, right? Because you're being restricted here, you're losing choice that you would otherwise have. So in return, you would hope that that particular preset linear set of choices is going to be more powerful. So that's the mindset we need to go into this Prestige class with as we go into kind of judge it and figure out if we like it or not. So let's take a look at what you get for class features. At level 1, you're going to get 2 auras. You're going to get Aura of Courage and Aura of Menace. Aura of Courage is going to make you immune to fear, and each ally within 10 feet of you gets a +4 morale bonus on saving throws against fear effects. Now, usually bonuses against fear are pretty situational, but when they do come up, they are pretty important. And something like the Halflings getting a bonus against it is just kind of a little side thing. It's almost just flavor. But a +4 is very solid. This will help you against specters and dragons and, enemy spellcasters doing various fear effects, which is good. It's not the absolute greatest, and it's only a 10-foot radius. But being immune to fear yourself is pretty great. Aura of Menace is going to surround you whenever you fight or get angry, and then any hostile creature within 5 feet of you takes a -2 penalty to AC attacks and saving throws for 24 hours or until it successfully hits you. And then once they break that aura, the effect, then they're not affected for another 24 hours. So this is really great for demoralizing your foes. It's a little bit like the Hexblade Curse, but it works automatically when you move within 5 feet of someone. That's a pretty good power. Right away, it's biasing this prestige class toward a melee focus, which for a prestige class with a D6 hit die, that's a little bit iffy. I mean, you have a D6 hit die, you have light armor, you only have simple weapon proficiency. Unless you're using Hideous Blow to channel your Eldritch Blast through your melee attacks and going for that kind of strategy, then you're probably not going to be doing the best with this, because you probably don't want to be within 5 feet of enemies usually. If this prestige class had a D8 hit die or something, or gave you better armor proficiency, that would be one thing. But it does not. So it's kind of hard to really get excited about this feature. Also at level 1, you're going to get Spirit Blast. This is an invocation that allows you to change your Eldritch Blast into a Spirit Blast. It does an extra 1 point of damage per die to undead, and it also affects incorporeal creatures without the normal mischance. This is situational, but this is really, really nice. This is basically Ghost Touch with bonus damage to undead, and that's really helpful. Normally, you're going to have a 50% mischance with your Eldritch Blast against incorporeal, and this is going to make it so you can just hit them. Now, is it worth giving up an invocation? Well, maybe, maybe not. But as a predefined thing, it is pretty good. It's nice to have the ability to reliably hit incorporeal creatures, and that's kind of partly your function as a warlock, is just to be able to reliably damage people, given that you're dealing out typeless damage with your Eldritch Blast anyway. So this kind of continues that theme, and it's a pretty good option. At level 2, you're going to get a plus 1d6 to your Eldritch Blast, so that now your 7th level, it's advancing as it otherwise would. So you keep your Eldritch Blast advancement. You don't get any new invocations besides what the Prestige class gives you predefined, but you do continue to advance your Eldritch Blast, which is really, really crucial, and it makes this Prestige class viable if nothing else. Spirit Armor, the other feature you get at level 2, gives you a plus 1 Sacred bonus to Armor class. This is pretty good. Again, it kind of plays more into the melee focus they seem to be going for here, and you can kind of see that from the character art. I mean, the Warlock's got his Morning Star out. He's flying with his wings, as we'll see in a minute why. And getting a plus 1 to armor class when you're a light armored class, and you probably wanted to go more into strength for this build than dexterity, unless you're going for like some kind of, just like using like a dagger or something, or a light mace finesse weapon, to be able to, use weapon finesse, make the most of your stats. You're probably not going to have the best armor class, so a little bit of help for it is good if you're going to be wandering into melee, but honestly, there are probably better options, such as Mischance, Cloak of Displacement, that sort of thing. At level 3, you're going to get Celestial Flight. This gives you the Celestial Flight invocation, and it lets you, it's basically just Fell Flight, but it's angel wings. You can fly at a speed equal to your land speed with good maneuverability for 24 hours. So that's basically the same thing that you could be getting from regular Warlock. At level 4, your Eldritch Blast goes up by another d6, and you get the Tongues ability. Basically, you can speak any language, works like the Tongue spell, it's continuously active, and you can suppress or resume it as a free action if for some reason you don't want to be able to understand somebody anymore. This is nice, Tongues is okay. Sometimes it will end up annoying the Dungeon Master if they say something's in an ancient language because they don't want to tell you exactly what it says or read something out, and then you can use Tongues whenever you want and you can understand it. But Tongues is good to have. It does set aside any difficulties with language. It's nice for if you're summoning, although you probably won't be doing a whole lot of that. At level 5, you're going to get Shape Invocation. This lets you learn any one least, lesser, or greater blast shape invocation, which you would be able to do anyway by this point, so it's just kind of compensating for the fact that you're not getting invocations from continuing with Warlock. Also at level 5, you're going to get Energy Resistance 5 to any 2 of the following energy types: Acid, Cold, Electricity, or Fire. And this is kind of to replace your Fiendish Resilience, which is also kind of replaced by Spirit Armor. It's nice to have a little bit of resistance to a couple of energy types. You probably want to pick common ones. But there's all sorts of energy types out there. I mean, cold and fire, probably good options, or fire and electricity. At level 6, you're going to have another die of Eldritch Blast, and your Spirit Armor is going to go up by another point. And then at level 7, you're going to get Holy Blast. This is an invocation, an Eldritch Essence one, that lets you change your Eldritch Blast into a Holy Blast. It does an extra 1 point of damage per die to evil outsiders, and automatically affects them as if you'd cast Dimensional Anchor on them. So Dimensional Anchor is pretty good, although oftentimes it's not really worth the extra round to cast it. So the nice thing about being able to do this is that you can slam it on an evil outsider without having to spend an extra round, and it means that they can't run away with teleport, which it depends on the Dungeon Master whether or not he uses those sorts of tactics. Personally, I would often have demons and devils teleport away when they were wounded because it was something that they were capable of doing, and there's really no reason why they wouldn't use it. Teleport away, they could heal up, get reinforcements, and then come back. So Holy Blast is a pretty strong ability. At higher levels, it's going to be pretty handy. It's very strong against a Dungeon Master that likes to use those sorts of tactics. And it's a good option overall. The higher level you get, the more that you're going to be fighting evil outsiders commonly. So at level 8, you're going to get Eldritch Blast plus 4d6. At level 9, you're going to get Transform Magic. And this is going to let you deliver a targeted greater dispel magic with your touch. And then you or any ally within 30 feet of you can heal 5 points of damage for each spell level dispelled by the touch. So if you successfully dispel a wall of ice, you or an ally could heal up to 20 points of damage. And you can't transform your own invocations, which sort of makes sense. They don't want you to be able to get infinite healing out of this sort of thing. Or just endless healing. So this is a pretty good ability, although you are going to have to run into effects that you can dispel. If you had a wand, this would essentially let you turn any wand of a continuous spell effect, even a first level one, into a wand of Cure Light Wounds, except slightly worse, maybe by half a point, but also reliable because it'll always be giving you 5 points of healing. This is sort of an interesting way of exploiting the magic system, and I don't see this one coming up a lot, but it definitely is abusable if you want to lean into it. Not an amazing feature, especially since we're up at level 9 now, and we could be picking from a whole list of other Warlock invocations, but it's still decent, it's not bad. Finally, at level 10, you're going to get your final improvement to Eldritch Blast. It's going to go up to 5d6. You're going to have 8d6 Eldritch Blast total, which is in line with where you should be as a Warlock. And Spirit Armor is going to finally be a total of +3 Sacred bonus to your armor class, which isn't fantastic, but it will make up some of the differential between light and heavy armor. Again, if you're going to be getting into melee with this prestige class, as it seems to want to encourage you to do, then this will be nice, but as is, it's not the greatest feature in the world. You're also going to get Death Ward as your capstone ability. You become immune to death spells, magical death effects, energy drain, and negative energy effects as per the Death Ward spell, except it's on you continuously. And again, this is situational, but it is pretty good, and you are going to be running into these effects a lot at higher level. And they're the sorts of things that are always going to have a 5% chance of killing you, unless you have spell resistance, then it's a little bit less. But the point is, you can always roll a natural 1 on a saving throw, and if you roll it against a death effect, well, you're dead. And that's less of a problem at higher levels, but it's still good to avoid. And so Death Ward is pretty good. I mean, being able to avoid negative energy and energy drain is really excellent as well. You can just waltz right into melee with vampires and not really worry about it. So this is a very strong ability, but it's kind of disappointing as a capstone. One would hope for an improved version maybe of the Holy Blast as well, and maybe stagger the Spirit Armor advancement differently so that level 10 could be left a little bit more open for some sort of feature like that. I mean, it has to have that Eldritch Blast advancement there, and the Death Ward is great at level 10, although really it should come in handy. It should be given earlier in a lot of ways. Overall, looking at this prestige class, you are basically giving up good Warlock options, and lots of them, for a set of predefined features that don't really have a cohesive goal or progression to them. You do get these 2 auras, one of which protects your allies, the other one seems to want to put you into melee. And then you don't really get a whole lot else that encourages you to be in melee. Other than your Holy Blast and your Spirit Blast, which are very strong, and they honestly form the core of the class. And honestly, this could be a 5-level prestige class that was going to give you Spirit Blast, Holy Blast. The Spirit Armor would be nice, maybe at levels 1, 3, and 5. The Aura of Courage you could keep, but it could honestly be dropped. If they really wanted to keep the melee theme, they could do Aura of Menace, but in some ways it fits the class thematically less than Aura of Courage does. And just having those 2 extra Blast Shape or Blast Essence invocations on will be really nice. It's not something that you really get by default as a Warlock, so that's nice. It is a good and unique pair of invocations, but the problem is you're just missing out on so many other options that it's really hard to want to take this prestige class. Some of the features that you get are features that you would get from being a Warlock anyway, which is both good and bad. It's good that you keep those really important core features, but it's also a little bit disappointing that you don't really get a whole lot else unique as well. I mean, even the Dispelling feature you get at level 9 exists in 2 different forms on the Warlock invocation list. You can deal damage to the enchanted creature you dispelled, or you can give yourself temporary hit points. You can't heal allies with it, admittedly, but that's just a little bit different, and you're still getting some kind of benefit from the dispelling that you're doing. So overall, I would give the Enlightened Spirit 4 stars for concept and 3 stars for execution. It's not necessarily bad, but you do need to make sure you're taking this in the right campaign, and you do have to be sure, looking through the Warlock invocation list, that there's nothing you're going to miss too much. Admittedly, you could multi-class back into Warlock, but once you get into this prestige class, you're probably going to want to stick with it. And personally, I would suggest only going for either 1 or 7 levels, which of course is a very big difference. But if you're in a campaign where you know you're going to be fighting a lot of evil outsiders and they're teleporting away a lot, then it's nice to build up to this. Although by the time you get that ability, you're going to be 12th level, and the wizard in the party is going to have had Dimensional Anchor for several levels now. And while they might not be casting it, if the demons are running away and it's becoming a problem, it usually is worth the round it takes to cast a spell. So it's not fantastic enough to be worth going for by itself. Overall, it's a fairly mediocre prestige class, but if you like the concept, absolutely go for it. You will be keeping up with your Eldritch Blast, which is, in a lot of ways, the most important thing about being a Warlock. Obviously, the invocations are quite strong as well. And while Warlock overall is not a very powerful class, getting those invocations, the ones that you get from this prestige class, at least fulfill the important stuff, like being able to fly, and getting a Dispel Magic type feature. Other than that, there's not a huge amount to really attract you to this in most cases, but again, you should take it for thematic reasons, if anything, and that's usually good enough. So the Enlightened Spirit is a decent prestige class, if not a very powerful one, and it's worth at least looking at if you like the concept. So that'll be about it for this D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.